Dr. Alex Mayer, Dr. Matt Hernandez. Welcome to the Smart Nutrition Made Simple show. What's going on, guys?
Thanks for having us.
Hey, thanks for having
We're
us. We're
excited to be here.
Absolutely.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you. We've been meaning to do this for a while, and I'm excited to share your guys' wisdom with our audience. How's the week been so far?
It's been good. It's been a really good week. We've kind of gotten into some of the groups we're part of for the practice that are restarting again, and lots of socializing. It's been good.
Some of the groups like after summer, like people coming back.
I think, yeah, like we're part of a couple, like an entrepreneur group and stuff like that, that's kind of joining back up again. And so they had their first social thing last night, and just kind of like, I think things are getting back into the groove, right? July tends to be a little bit of a crickets kind of month.
Yeah,
we 100%.
We have a lot of patients that travel out of state and stuff to, go to their vacation homes and stuff, get out of the heat. So
Yeah, for some context, you guys are in Scottsdale. And so give us a little bit of background about your business.
We have a functional medicine practice, and we specialize in helping active individuals maintain feeling their best and being active. And we do this through hormones, sports medicine, and aesthetics are our three specialties.
What prompted you guys to get into this field?
This was kind of always how we started our practice. Like we started our practice individually as independent contractors in another location. And Matt's specialty was always sports medicine and male hormones. And my specialty was always female hormones and aesthetics. What we love to do is help patients hit their max potential. And honestly, it's what we love even in our business. Like it's my favorite thing about having employees is helping my employees hit their max potential. And that's my favorite thing about patient care as well. We're a very kind of results-oriented practice, and hormones is a really great field in terms of helping patients long-term wise, like increase their health span and maintain their longevity and those kind of things, but also just helping patients feel better. Because at the end of the day, right, when you see women, especially, but I'm sure with men too, that have been everywhere. They've been to other practices and everything is quote unquote normal and they feel like crap. There's always something going on. And so that investigative side and that kind of connecting the dots side has been very, very rewarding. Because we have so many patients, like I have so many patients that sit down in front of me that say, I don't even know if you can help me because I've been everywhere and everyone says everything's normal and it's not. And it's very rewarding when those patients come back and you've changed their life.
I think in school, when we were in medical school, the gap that we saw in medicine primarily was that a lot of the healthcare system here in the US is really built around helping people that are sick, right? So like if you go and look at your labs, or if the doctor goes and looks at your labs, if you're saying that you're not feeling good, but the labs don't show that because they're not drastically out of range or abnormal or something like that, then you're usually in the experience we've had with treating patients, they're kind of dismissed and said they're just told like nothing's wrong, or the common excuse is like, oh, you're just getting older, and so this is normal to feel that way and stuff like that. And the model misses a lot of going in and helping optimize people, right? So how do we stop people from getting sick in the first place? How do we help prevent those things? How can we help them feel better, even if they feel average, right? Like most people walking around, they wouldn't consider themselves sick. But if you go and ask somebody, oh, do you feel tired in the afternoon? Like, do you have trouble sleeping? Do you feel like you should have more energy than you do right now?
Right.
And a lot of them will be like, yeah, I wish I had the energy from I did like 5-10 years ago. And these people could be in their 40s.
Right.
And there's no answer for that in the conventional medical model. And so that was a lot of the gaps that we saw, a lot of gaps similar to that. And we were kind of we had a discussion and we're like, okay, well, I think this is what we want to help, because this is the vast majority of people walking around is they feel okay. Like they're living, they're doing their thing. But, when you ask the question, do you think you could feel a little bit better than what you do right now, even though you're not, super sick? They're like, yeah, it'd be nice to have that. And so those are the people that we really focus on helping.
Yeah, we get a lot of patients with like you're just 40 as their diagnosis, or you're just 50
Oh, you're
as their
just
diagnosis.
getting older, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a diagnosis.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, listen, as like you guys said, you're high performers in business. You want to work with high performing individuals that essentially want to figure out how to be high performers in their body. And that's the way I think about it with
100%.
with our clientele. Is just being average, just being normal is not good enough. And like you said, is like with our sick care system, our healthcare system, with conventional labs, and with human physiologies, our body does a remarkably good job of keeping people in homeostasis, right?
Yes.
And so you really have to be pretty sick and things have to be pretty out of balance for those red lights to start to go off. How many clients have you worked with where they're like, I'm pre-diabetic, but I'm not yet diabetic. So I'm still okay. And I'm air quoting here for anyone listening here. I'm quite a lot, which in our context of like actually getting to the root cause of these things and truly being able to help people, I think we could all agree, like, just because you're not yet diabetic doesn't mean that things are okay. Right. And so what I'm hearing from you guys is you're leveraging sort of this holistic approach to helping people bridge the gap between where they are, where they want to be, through functional medicine practices, which very briefly, could you help us understand just what does that mean?
Functional medicine has kind of been, it's the idea is getting to the root cause. We never use that in our practice because it just doesn't really resonate with us or our patients very well. But I would say it's actually treating what's going on. And so it's better investigation, it's better lab work, and it's kind of the connecting of systems is how I would explain functional medicine. For example, one of the things that we see in women's medicine, right, is that we silo things. So we go, okay, great. You have a hormonal issue, like a period issue. And so you go see your gynecologist, and you have a thyroid issue and you should go see your endocrinologist. And then if it's cortisol issue, good luck. And so you have to connect the dots on all these things, right? Like we know that having low progesterone will impact thyroid function. And nobody's talking about that. And that's what I think functional medicine is. Where I think functional medicine gets a little bit of a bad name is that there are a lot of practices where we're just throwing a lot of labs at people, right? And so it's this giant lab panel of everything. And that's not really how we practice medicine. We practice medicine very tailored to you. We'll explain why we think different labs are necessary, what we think's going on, what the order of operation should be. So that instead of it being like, oh, come in and do this giant panel that makes no sense, you're going to have a panel that makes sense and is run on the right time and is run correctly and has validity in your case. But it's really investigation, I think, and like connecting the dots, which is where medicine's just not good.
Yeah. And I appreciate the analogy of like just the specialization of conventional medicine. And this conversation is not about bagging on conventional medicine, but what it is about is what I'm hearing is taking this sort of diagnostic and clinical approach to giving us the information that we need to dig deeper into what body systems we can identify that need support and holistically how to synergistically kind of support everything through hormones, through medicine, through supplementation, through nutrition, through physical activity, and then also through more progressive approaches to, like you said, help people optimize. Like, how do we get people feeling better, looking better, ramping up energy and doing the things that they want to do in their life? Because that's for all of us high performers, that's ideally what we want, right?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
We talked, I think you mentioned longevity, right? You guys work on helping people feel their best. One of the buzzwords now is anti-aging. We hear longevity. We hear people like Dr. Peter Attia talking a lot about all of these modalities that we should be leveraging to increase our health span, increase our lifespan. Talk to us a little bit about what kind of longevity means to you guys when we say the word health span. What does that mean for people, and how much influence do we have over perhaps health span, lifespan, longevity, as the name implies?
I will answer your question. I'm going to start with anti-aging. I don't love the term anti-aging, and it's funny because I am in the world of aesthetics. You would think that it's something that I'd really resonate with, but I feel like with longevity and health span, the main thing is that concept of being able to show up as your best self for as long as possible, right? In the ideal world, you would live to whatever age you want. It doesn't really matter what age you pick. Some people don't want to live to 120. Some people want to live to 130, right? But the idea is that no matter what age you pick, you live right up to that age, and then you just quickly pass away. And that sounds very morbid, but it's not. In the majority of cases now, patients have this long decline. And that's where we're struggling, like our family's struggling to take care of us, and we're struggling with quality of life. And it's not the way that people want to live. And so health span really is about narrowing the gap at the end. And I think it starts way earlier than people think it does, right? So it starts in your 30s and your 40s, when maybe you have an injury and you can no longer go out and do the thing that you like to do. So let's say you love to play pickleball, right? And that's your thing. That's your form of exercise. You get an injury, you can no longer do that. And so then next thing you know, you're down this road of like being a bit more sedentary. You haven't found that thing to pick it up yet. Getting your hormones in check at that time, making sure that we're paying attention to things like family history and mitigating some of those things early, right? Because we can see warning signs in the past. And so I think that the longevity conversation, you can do a lot to impact your longevity. Hormones really play a huge role in that. And we see this in women, especially in the menopausal years, right? Like women have a vastly different risk factor with different health conditions prior to menopause. And then the minute their hormones go in the tank, their risk factors go up like crazy. And so we can really impact those things by doing proper hormone replacement and starting it at the proper time. So that's what longevity means to me.
Yeah. And I agree with all those things. And instead of repeating what she said, I'll go and give two examples of like two of my own family members that kind of compare and contrast the two. Right. So I have my an aunt who she just turned 94 this year. So she turned 94, still mobile, doesn't live dependently, but that's more because her kids choose that. She has the ability to live dependently. Like she gets up every morning, walks to her kitchen, cooks her own food. She can dance if a good song comes on that she enjoys. Like she's mobile. She can take care of herself. Doesn't need help going to the bathroom, going like and jumping in and out of the shower, all that stuff. Like very mobile, mentally very sharp. Like no cognitive decline at all. She remembers everyone's name. She'll remember things from when I was a kid. Every time I call her, she'll ask how Alex is doing, and she's only interacted with Alex like 4 or 5 times. Just extremely sharp. Everything that you would want at as a 94-year-old. And I don't want to think about her passing away, but statistically, at this point, if she were to pass away, it's going to be a pretty rapid decline, or when she does pass away, it'll be a pretty rapid decline versus a gradual thing where she's experienced like dementia and all this other stuff. Right.
Yep. So
that's what improving health span looks like. And you compare that to like my grandfather, active, but had type 2 diabetes, had heart disease. I'm from Texas, so we have a ranch back at home. And so my grandpa had a ranch, would work on the ranch every day, like very hardworking, very active and all that stuff, and took a lot of pride in being able to work around the ranch and build stuff and do all these things. But because he didn't take care of the diabetes, the blood pressure, like all the heart disease, stuff like that, eventually he had a stroke. And he had a stroke, I think when he was like 74, if I remember correctly, on his age. So recovered from it. Shortly after that, had a second stroke. And then that one left him bedridden, where my grandparents had to have a caregiver come in. My uncles and my dad and myself would have to go take care of him from time to time.
Yeah.
Couldn't go to the bathroom, like had to use a bedpan, all that stuff. And he stayed that way for 3 years until he passed. Right. And so those two stories, like of my own family members, are drastically different. And I think if you were to ask anybody, hey, which one would you choose? They're going to go with, what my aunt. Right. And so that's looking at the importance of longevity and health span. That's the difference of what you get, as you get older. And it starts, early in 30s, 40s. And if you didn't, do well in your 30s and 40s, that's fine. You could be 50, 60, 70 and still make a drastic impact on that. But ultimately that's kind of what you're going for, is being able to stay active and mentally sharp and all that stuff for as long as possible.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think it's becoming much more acknowledged now, is like, listen, just because people are potentially living longer, the quality of life is significantly lower than it's been for, generations prior. It's like, okay, just because you live to 90, like you could have been sick since you're 70, and like progressively more and more immobile and, more medicated and more demented. And, we listen, if anyone's listening, like we all can resonate with this. We have parents and grandparents who are experiencing this, have experienced this. And so I think we can clearly envision the differences between someone who lives a long, healthy life, even if it's a shorter life, but a healthier, higher quality life. And I think that's what we all want. And what I appreciate you guys bringing to the table is that this starts now. This starts in our 30s and 40s. And I think that's most of our audience listening here is this is far beyond just quote unquote optimizing things for the sake of looking good, right? This is like, listen, it's one thing if it's, injectables and skincare and just, on the outside looking good. But it's also about our daily behaviors and lifestyle practices that are contributing to our ability to live a long and healthy life. And it sounds like you guys have a nice sort of mix of services to be able to support people with these needs. Obviously, Dr. Alex, from a female hormone standpoint, from a female skincare standpoint, Matt, from a male hormone standpoint, from a joint care standpoint, from a sport performance standpoint, is perhaps some of those modalities are opportunities for people to feel better, look better, as well as take the necessary steps to also improve all those other areas of their life. Is that a fair maybe comment?
Yeah, absolutely. I think at the end of the day, when we go back to like, the definition of health span and looking at keeping people active, mentally sharp, healthy, all that stuff, our role in this is really just going and providing therapies that stack the odds in our patient's favor of being able to do that, right? And so we kind of look at what are the things that are important to consider in this to improve that health span and to increase longevity, and how do we stack the odds in our patient's favor?
I think that when you tie in like the aesthetic side, it's really about just showing up as the best version of yourself, right? And I always say to my patients, showing up as the best version of yourself goes past how you look in your jeans, right? And into kind of how you actually show up as a person. And so a lot of aesthetics, I think, especially here in Scottsdale, there's a lot of Scottsdale Barbie wandering around, right? And so we are not super Scottsdale Barbie at our practice. We are more, how do you show up as the most confident, best version of yourself, right? So like, if you're an entrepreneur and you're going to get up on stage and do a talk, how do you feel the best that you could feel? And part of that is an inside out vitality, right? And then part of that's just sometimes there's things that people have that really impact them. Like hair loss is one in women. It really impacts them, right?
Yeah.
If your hair is thinning and there's very little things that you can do about it. So treating something like that will impact everything. And I think that is the coolest part of our job is that the same thing as we said about longevity, like it starts early. The things that you do matter to the people around you too. And so it flows outwards in families, right? Like it starts with one person and then it flows down to the kids and it flows outward to the parents. And I think that in moms, right, showing up as a really confident version of yourself gives your kids, especially if you have daughters,
right,
a really important message. And so it goes beyond kind of that fake plastic perfect and to just what is the best version of you in every single way.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. Absolutely. You said from an inside out, but I also think from an outside in. It's like, hey, if you feel confident on the outside, maybe that's the impetus for you to take the steps to really start to improve that internal health.
Correct.
And so it's giving people the opportunity to do that. And, Matt, from your standpoint, maybe it's like, hey, like I want to do the things, but, my knees, my shoulders, my back. And it's like, hey, if we can remedy some of these joint, some of the joint inflammation, some of those complications to get you moving more consistently, then that's going to contribute to, you making those improvements. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm sure you've seen this in your patients too, that have been very athletic in the past. It becomes a lot of their identity, right? And so that's like where their social circle is. That's what they do. And then when they lose that ability to be active, it really is a hard blow, right? Like a lot of people have heard of the stories of people who are like professional athletes that get injured and the progression that they go through. But I think it's similar for somebody that's a super active individual and that's their entire community, right? So being able to get them back to that changes a lot of things for them.
Yeah. Yeah, because their identity is tied in that. And similarly, it's like, hey, if you are not someone that is currently, let's say you're in your 40s or 50s right now, and you are going down the road of, what we talk about is like with conventional blood work, like the norms are based on Homer Simpson, essentially.
Right, exactly.
Like, so if you're going down the road of Homer Simpson norms,
I like that.
and your identity's tied to couch potato lifestyle, it's like, well, how do I start to change my identity? And what steps am I taking to, flip the script here? How do I start to become more physically active? How do I kind of fall in love with the process of eating healthier and surrounding myself with people that are actually going to lift me up instead of drag me down? And how do I start to think more positively? So, and all of those things. So for you guys, when we talk about longevity and health span, how do you work with clients? And I guess what would you say are like the big needle movers in terms of, and listen, I realize there's a lot, but what are kind of the main things that you think about that you think people need to be cognizant of when it comes to improving our quality of life and ultimately our longevity?
The framework that we use at our practice centers around six variables, and then from there they kind of all break down even further. But we can go over the six variables. So the very first one is when we're looking at ways to stack the odds in your favor, for lack of a better term in this case, family history, right? So like genetically, what are you predisposed to? So like me being Hispanic, like I have a genetic predisposition to develop type 2 diabetes very easily, right? Like that can, if I don't pay attention to that can get away from me very quickly, faster than say Alex, and like in Alex's case, who doesn't have a big family history of that. So looking at that piece, and so the four things we're interested in here are going to be cardiovascular health, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's, dementia, cancer. Those are kind of the big four that we need to pay attention to from that perspective. After we, check off family history and we've evaluated that, now we're starting to look at the three foundations, which is what everyone kind of knows, which is exercise, nutrition, and then sleep/energy.
Real quick, can I jump back? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, please.
Just with respect to family history, because I think that people use their quote unquote genetics as a crutch sometimes, perhaps as an excuse. And, there's that saying that genetics loads the gun and lifestyle pulls the trigger, right?
Correct.
And so what do you guys see? And how do you kind of recommend that people look at family history of how impactful is it really in your opinion?
So I think it definitely increases your risk overall. So you what that turns into is more careful monitoring of those risks, and then doing things to kind of being more proactive about stopping that from coming up in the first place.
I think it also depends, right? Because if we're thinking about like type 2 diabetes, that's very much lifestyle driven, right?
Much.
Versus if we're looking at something like Alzheimer's and dementia, sure, it might be, but we don't have all the answers on that yet, right? So we have to go with what we think is going to be the most impactful. And so currently that's looking like estrogen replacement, right? Especially in women who have a higher rate of Alzheimer's and dementia than men do. And so we want to tie this into some of our conversation. So in my HRT conversation that I have with patients, which is a risk benefit ratio, right? We're going over things like the Women's Health Initiative, which wasn't really that great and has kind of slowed women's progress for a lot of years, breast cancer risk, all those things. But I'm throwing in that piece of Alzheimer's and dementia, especially if you have a family history, right? Because there are certain things that we really want to get ahead of, because if we get behind the 8 ball on some things, the reversal is tough or not existent. And so that's where I see family history play a big role. It's a big conversation between like type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance and obesity and those kind of things versus Alzheimer's and dementia, which for me is just a different beast.
So a good jumping off point, and something that could also seemingly be a good motivator for someone to acknowledge. It's like, hey, this is present, doesn't necessarily mean anything other than we need to be cognizant of it. And if it's something that you care about, obviously that would be a good opportunity to, let's just pay attention.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So then you said nutrition, exercise, what else?
Sleep and energy. So those are kind of like our next 3 that we pay attention to. And so from the nutrition aspect, is there any food sensitivities that the patient has? How does their body best utilize fuel, right? And this is more in your in your realm at this point. Does their body process carbs well? Does it process fats well? Do they have trouble breaking down protein? Do they have digestive issues that's causing them from not being able to absorb nutrients? Those are a lot of the things that we're looking in there. What's the quality of food that they're eating, the quantity that they're eating, under eating, overeating, those types of things. Those are the pieces that we're looking at. And then if we really wanted to dive into it, like let's go back to the type 2 diabetes patient, or the person that's at risk for it. Okay, genetically, you are predisposed to this. Let's use like a continuous glucose monitor for a month and see how well you do with that. And then we can actually gauge what your risk is based on your lifestyle.
Now, I apologize if I missed it, but did you say in someone who's at risk of type 2 diabetes or who's already type 2 diabetic, or you clearly like they've got some blood sugar instability, you're a bit concerned, in which case the CGM would probably make sense.
Yeah, so you can use it in all of those, right? So with someone who has type 2 diabetes, it's going to give them good information on what food and how they react to different foods,
definitely.
Right? But if you wanted to be proactive, so like me myself, right, where I'm at risk for developing it, although I do a good job from a nutrition standpoint in maintaining it, I could always go and check to see, okay, let's say around the holidays where everyone falls off, I haven't been super great, right? So how much more did I put myself at risk compared to when I'm actually paying attention to what I'm eating? And a CGM can give you that information if you do it at 2 separate times.
I also think that in people who want really tailored advice, right, a CGM can just be helpful for getting them that, right? So that they can start to have this conversation of like their body really does well if they do this, and they really does poorly if they do this. Like I have a patient right now who's on a CGM. She does have some glucose issues, even though she's doing all the right things. And so she had to learn, like, if she makes her child pasta, right, she makes it with protein now. She eats her protein first, and then she has a little bit, and she finds that her blood sugar doesn't spike, right? But like rice, she completely cut out of her diet, because even if she has a little tiny bit of rice, her blood glucose spikes like crazy. And so I think that even in patients where it might not be pertinent for health history and those kind of things, it can be really helpful for somebody that wants to be optimized. A lot of patients have a lot of very, and you'll, this very strict views around certain things when it comes to nutrition, right? And so it can be helpful for kind of helping alleviate some of those views if they might not be correct. Now, when we say we're looking at nutrition, a lot of the time we're guiding patients in terms of getting them to somebody who's really good, because I think nutrition is so nuanced. And there is so much bad advice out there on nutrition that you really want somebody that like, that's their focus. And our patients that get the best results, we are working with, particularly macro tracking is where we tend to send to, but we're working with that kind of piece like you do to help patients go in the right direction, because at the end of the day, you want somebody that's really focused on that piece. So we'll kind of guide them. We're looking at it. We're helping them to determine maybe who's the next step, those kind of pieces, but it's not really our main focus in our office in terms of what we're doing in our visits and our.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And obviously it's a big piece when it comes to this longevity discussion. And one of the things I appreciate about what you said, especially with reference to the CGM, is I think we can all agree is like giving and empowering our clientele to take ownership over their behaviors.
Yeah.
100%.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, listen, and perhaps that's the biggest differentiator that ultimately like we're talking about here between a diagnostic medicine of like, here's your pill, like you're type 2 diabetic, here's your metformin, like, there you go, good luck, to, okay, like, here's your CGM, like you need to start to pay attention to the food you're consuming, focus on protein, move your body consistently after meals, and really just starting to pay attention. And so helping our clients develop more awareness. And that's one of the things, we wholeheartedly, one of the many things that we wholeheartedly agree on is in terms of the client taking ownership over these behaviors of whether they're tracking their calories and tracking their macros, whether they're just writing down their foods or taking picture, whether they're measuring things out, whether they're just tracking blood glucose and paying attention to the things that fire them up. I think we can all agree that it really does come down to the client being proactive, not dissimilar to perhaps how we would do in business is, we have variables that we're paying attention to in our business metrics and our KPIs, right, in our budget. And we're leveraging that, those variables to make informed decisions. And I think that's the level of autonomy that clients need to possess in order to quote unquote optimize. Like you're not going to do it for them, right?
Right.
No. And that is the really where I think our version of medicine does really great work is when you have somebody that is motivated to take control. And that's why I think there are a lot of places that do kind of like program stuff and they're always putting people through the same program, but it doesn't for us. I mean, it's really about the patient taking control and us guiding them there, right? So we're strategizing to say, hey, if we were creating a roadmap, this is what we think the roadmap would look like in terms of your health, what you have going on, where you want to get to. This is the strategy to go down the road, but we're not doing it, right? I don't live with that person. I don't cook their meals. Yeah. I don't move their body. I don't even take their medicine. And so it's one of those things, right? That I think that buy-in is really important. It's one of the things Peter Attia talks about in like his Medicine 3.0 that I love was his analogy of the way that medicine moved. Because we're definitely moving away from this society of medicine where like doctor is God and you just listen exactly what doctor says. And we're going towards this, hey, we're here to guide you.
Right.
You got to do it.
Yeah. And it's such a big paradigm shift.
It is.
My parents are that exact mentality of like, do what the doctor says. If someone is a doctor, they are automatically put on a pedestal to the degree that like, well, we won't go there. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll let you finish your 6 pillars. So we talked family history, nutrition, exercise, sleep.
And then the final 2 are hormones. And then what we call optimization is number 6. So optimization has to do more with like cellular medicine, where you're looking at like mitochondrial health and you're looking at different, different signalings outside of peptides to help improve longevity and everything. And so those are the all 6 of them.
And we would almost put that like a pyramid. And I think sometimes people put their pyramid upside down, and what they want is they want optimization, right? So they're on Instagram and they're listening to this person, and this person's saying they need NAD, and this person's like, no, it's NMN. And then this person is saying they need cold plunges and whatever, but they've never got their hormones checked. None of that's in balance, and they don't sleep, they don't exercise, and they don't eat nutritious food.
Yeah,
you're not going to go anywhere.
Cold plunges. Yeah, that's right.
And so I think that's the biggest thing is we are big about like being advanced in medicine, and we've seen some really fantastic things with that, right? But I think that if you're going to come in and do peptides, you need to have your hormones optimized first. You need to know that things are functioning in the right direction. And then even before you get, well, maybe before or during, you need to get your nutrition optimized, and you need to be sleeping, and you need to be doing those things. And I think a lot of people have their pyramid upside down.
Yeah. The conversation we tend to have with our patients is, look, hormones will, and peptides, and any of the other stuff that we do, it'll help you and it will improve. But what it does is it compounds what your lifestyle does for you already, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you're going to sit on the couch all the time, if you're not going to eat, be conscious of what you're eating and just eat fried food all the time, no amount of hormone therapy or peptides is going to help you move to the next level, right? Yeah. And so you need to do that. But again, the guidance that, or our goal when we're looking at the foundational stuff of energy, sleep, exercise, and nutrition is more guidance to say, okay, yeah, this is something that you can improve on, or this is pretty well dialed in. And then if it needs to be improved on, then we connect them with someone that, helps with that. Right.
I think balancing act between the two is really important, because we've seen a lot of patients, like one of my best patients that I've ever had. I love her. She came in and she was terrified to come to me because she had seen another naturopathic physician, and she was kind of told, well, turn off your Wi-Fi at night and don't get any EMFs and take all of these things out of your diet. And she wasn't given anything else. And she sat down in front of me. I said, okay, well, great. We're going to look at your hormones first, and then we'll kind of dial it in. And she does all of the things that I tell her to do. And she's a great patient. And she now exercises 4 or 5 days a week, and she's working on the nutrition piece. But we had to go in a way that felt like she could do it. And I think that there's so much either very drastic lifestyle things that don't match what the patient needs, and then there isn't enough hormones, or there's just the hormones and not the lifestyle. And the analogy that I use with my patients, I use this a lot in weight, is that the analogy of a path. And so I tell patients, we're walking down a path, right? And so if we are walking down the path of weight loss, for example, it's the pillars of lifestyle that move us that direction. So it's what we put in our bodies, how much we exercise, and do we sleep, are moving us forward. What hormones are doing is basically, if we walk down a path and we come to this dead wall, which if your hormones are not optimized, you will, hormones are going to help us scale that wall. And so could we move forward with diet, exercise, and sleep? 100%, right? But scaling that wall is going to be a lot harder versus if then we optimize hormones and we add in some peptides and we do those things, we'll be able to scale that wall quicker. But if you aren't doing the other things, you're never moving forward. So it doesn't matter anyway.
I can appreciate that a lot because I think there's definitely some stigma, especially for men, around hormone optimization. And it's sort of like, you get the dichotomy, right? Where it's like you get the practitioners who are like, you have no business being on hormones until you improve all of these fundamental principles in your life, right? And you get the other guys that are like, you're not going to be able to address those until you absolutely, or maybe you don't even worry about those. All you need to do is just,
testosterone.
Do testosterone replacement, right? Or peptides or both or whatever, with all the hormone clinics popping up. And that's where, gosh, what's so challenging perhaps, or difficult, is the fact that people want these definitive answers, of tell us what to do, right? And we can't.
And that magic pill.
And the magic pill is like, should I do peptides? Should I do testosterone? Just help me make the decision. We can't, It's like we have to inform you so that you can make the best decision possible for you. But if you're not doing the things to create more awareness in your life around your daily behaviors and your nutrition intake and your sleep and your exercise output, and you've got no business talking about optimizing anything. Like you need to improve your lifestyle behaviors.
100%. I think these things happen together, though. In a lot of cases, I think they happen together, right? Like the example they used of a man. If you have super low testosterone, that motivation to get to the gym and your ability to actually work out is poor, right? So it's really frustrating for patients when they do start to do something. And granted, it's never for a long enough period of time. So I'm going to start by saying that it's never for a long enough period of time, but it is frustrating when you're like, I can't go to the gym because I am exhausted. And if I go to the gym, then the rest of the day I can't function. And so it doesn't work, right? And that's where I think the balancing act is really important in getting patients kind of the best results.
And even another example would be like with sleep, right? So like and I can't speak for women because I don't do women's hormones, so Alex can speak up. But like with men, when I work with men, you'll get guys that come in and they're like, yeah, I fall asleep super easily, but I can't stay asleep. Or the second my head hits the pillow, like I get all this energy because my mind's racing. Right. Or I wake up and I don't feel rested. Right. And so any combination of those. And it's like, okay, understand that. So they're like, how am I expected to improve my sleep if I can't get it? It's like, okay, yeah, that's fair. I understand that. You likely have what I've seen with patients is if there's a cortisol problem where they're spiking cortisol at night, or if the guy has low testosterone, then that's going to impact his ability to sleep. Right. And so if we come in with hormone therapy first and we go and help them balance those two hormones again, they're sleeping better. And then from there, it starts to snowball, right? They're like, okay, I sleep better. Now when I wake up, I feel like going to the gym. And so I'll go work out. Okay, I'm feeling great in the gym. I'll start paying attention to how I eat more. And so and then everything just snowballs and compounds on itself. But sometimes you need to stop fighting the uphill battle. And that's what hormones and peptides, all those things allow us to do is to really help start that off.
Do you guys subscribe to the belief that basically our modern day world is just putting us in a position where we essentially are going to need some level of exogenous support? It's like, how likely is it, right? How likely is it that, like, because no one's going to live that lifestyle, like living off the land and not being in front of Wi-Fi and, all of the things that quote unquote, you're not supposed, you're supposed to do, and avoiding processed food and drinking clean water and clean air and cold plunges. But so how likely is it that people truly can feel their best without acknowledging that perhaps at this point in our evolution, like we might just need to rely on our progressive approaches to medicine?
I think there's a lot of truth in that, right? I think we see this more in the research on men than we do in women. Yeah. And I think that's just because the women's hormones are so complicated.
It's too hard to do research.
We complicate things. It's what we do, right? But in men, we see that the testosterone levels, even in their 30s, men in their 30s now have testosterone levels that would have been of men in their 70s or something like that.
Yeah, totally.
Only a couple decades ago. And so we're seeing the decline in sperm count. We're seeing decline in testosterone. We're seeing decline in all of these things. And so, yeah, I do. And we can extrapolate that to women, which I actually hate because I don't think that women are just little men, but the research is just a bit more complicated. So I think it's extrapolating it to women. We would see probably very similar things, right?
I think the majority of people will benefit from taking it. I do think that there's a small subset of the population that won't need to do anything at all because genetically they're going to be really good off the bat. Yeah, I have a 82-year-old patient that has a testosterone of 950 naturally, which is
good for him.
Which is crazy. I mean, that's what I expect for a 20, 30-year-old, and he does that naturally, right? So in individuals like him, it won't be the case, but the vast majority of people, I think they would benefit from it. And to Alex's point, there's a phenomenal book called Countdown. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember the author's name, but she's an epidemiologist, and she went and did research on testosterone levels and sperm count in men and fertility. And what that research showed was there's a drastic decline around the world, right? So it's not just the United States, where we have a reputation for like not eating well, like the average person, stuff like that, and like not being healthy overall. This is like around the world. There's a drastic decline in all that. And her hypothesis or her theory on why that is has to do with a lot of factors that are very hard for us to control: the air we breathe, the water that we drink, pesticide use, a number of things like that. And so there's things you can do to go in, like different like types of water filters and air purifiers in the home, stuff like that. Yes, like those will help it, but ultimately, I think that at the end of the day, most people are going to benefit from having the treatment or going and using exogenous hormones and different things like that to help them.
It's called it's by Shanna Swan.
That sounds
Countdown: accurate. How our modern world is threatening sperm counts, altering male and female reproductive development, and imperiling the future of the human race. And I've had a number of men and women, physicians on the show over the years talking about men and declining testosterone and sperm production, and essentially the over estrogenation, if you will, for lack of not a word, but whatever it is.
Estrogen mimickers,
of our society, through all of our environmental toxins and everything like that. So I think it's relevant that we need to be cognizant of this, and people at the end of the day, like, listen, need to be really, really proactive. And for your guys' approach, it's like, hey, like, there's obviously a lot of things that we can do. We take this multifaceted approach to health and well-being and longevity, just helping people look and feel their best is ultimately what we're looking for. And so what would you say, so that we can wrap things up here, and I want to respect your guys' time, but like, what's the first step for people if they're listening to this and they're like, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed with all the things. I know I need to change my nutrition. I know I need to start moving more. I feel like my energy's terrible. I'm not sleeping well, and I'm ready to make change. I just don't know what the first step is. Like, what would you guys suggest?
My first step would be to get a win. And so this usually looks like doing something that's going to give you a result where you can start to feel better so that you can go and do the other things. And oftentimes that is getting a good hormone panel run. We actually do have a resource that patients can grab from us for women and men, why your labs are quote unquote normal and you still feel like crap. And it's just talking about how to properly run like hormones and labs, and why maybe people are not getting the help that they need. And that would be my first step, is optimizing hormones.
We'll put that. So we'll drop that in the show notes, that resource. So guys, make sure if that, well, check that out if you're curious as to what could be going on with your hormones and you want clarity before you go and get your panels run. What else? Anything else, Matt?
I think what Alex said is really accurate. What's a win that you can get off the bat, right? When we have a patient sitting in front of us, that's the thing that we're trying to solve for them is, okay, we want to improve a number of things, yes. And ideally it would all happen at once, but we need that catalyst. So if we ask the question, okay, if we were 30 days from now, when we sit down again, what is it that you would like to have seen changed? Like, what's one win that we can go and look at? And everyone gives a different answer, right? Like, some people say, if I could just sleep better. Some people are like, if I could move without this knee pain, if I could, whatever it is, what that looks like, that's what we focus on, right? And so knowing what that is for you will then give you direction to go and start figuring out, okay, what's the next step after that? And so, but knowing, prioritizing what a win is for you in that case is going to be really important.
And then I just want to paint the picture for patients, because sometimes patients think, I've done this, right? I've done this before. So the way that I would look at this is if you are female and you are cycling and you have never had a doctor say, run your labs on this specific day, then they haven't been run right. So that's a good cue. And then 2, if you haven't had a doctor go through line by line on your labs and say like, hey, this looks good, this is about where I'd like this to be, or optimal for this is this to this is what we're looking at, then you haven't had somebody really go through your labs. A lot of medicine is kind of like scanning the right side to see what's out of reference range flagged by the lab. But like you said, that's based on Homer Simpson, right? And so we want better than that. And so that would be my suggestion to patients, is just to kind of sit down and think, have I had this done before? Because most patients will say, I've gotten good labs run, but they haven't been interpreted the right way, or they haven't even been run right. So,
well, where can people find out more about you guys?
Our website is Ethos Scottsdale with 2 S's in the middle.com. But we also have a lot of good information on YouTube, on a variety of different things. So my YouTube is Dr. Alex Mayer. We also have the Ethos Scottsdale YouTube. And that's a really good place to look and just dive into some individual topics if you have questions on that. Yeah. And then we're also on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Yeah. So we'll have all of those resources, obviously, per usual, down in the show notes, guys. So you can check out Dr. Matt and Dr. Alex's links, find out more about them. Come into Scottsdale, come have a sit down with me. We'll get a workout in. We'll talk shop about nutrition, supplementation. We'll go see Dr. Matt and Dr. Alex. We'll get some blood work run, and we'll work together to figure out the best approach to optimizing your health. Obviously, they are a wealth of knowledge. And listen, guys, I appreciate you so much. Your belief system around health and well-being, the way that you support your clients, it's directly in line with what we believe in terms of helping change the belief system around what it means to be healthy, because your health and longevity, it starts right now. And it starts with your daily decisions, your thought processes, the people that you're surrounding yourself with, and the actions that you're taking on a daily basis. And so obviously, we have a wealth of information here between Dr. Matt and Dr. Alex, as well as all of our 200 and some podcast episodes, our Smart Nutrition Made Simple Facebook group, our YouTube channel, you name it. And so just let us know how we can support you. If you're interested in having a conversation about your nutrition, about your fitness, and about your weight loss journey, feel free to just reach out to me personally, and we can have a conversation to see how we can support you. Otherwise, thank you for taking the time to tune in. Dr. Matt, Dr. Alex, pleasure. We'll have you on again to talk a little more granularly about hormones a little bit more. I want to talk about GLP-1 agonists. I want to talk about peptides. I want to talk about joint health and PRP. Man, we could go on for a while. So we'll definitely do this again.
Awesome. We look forward to it. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you so much for having us.
Take care, guys. Talk soon.